Hi, this is Tom Jacobs from tdjacobs.com and also healingsuicide.com. And I'm an evolutionary astrologer, also a channel, an energy worker, and a medium. And I keep saying that in these, I'm doing these COVID-19 videos, and even this is the third one in the series of on grief or dealing with grief. But I don't talk about astrology much. Today I am. Today I'm going to pull in how to understand Pluto when it comes to grief in anybody's chart or anybody's life. So if you haven't seen the first two videos and are interested in this, I would encourage you to check those out and then come back and watch this one. And of course, if you're not interested in astrology, this might, you know, this might be kind of outside your interest area. But I think for those of you who follow me who are interested in astrology and evolutionary astrology in particular, having watched those other two videos, this will help close the circle or complete a circle and make sense. So as I talked about in the other two videos, the first one was about kind of understanding grief and the waves of energy that any emotion is and how normally they'll come up and then we try to tamp them down. And then but it's important to move energy through crying, through communication, through an honest approach to what we feel and not creating shadows and not shaming ourselves for having emotions. And then in video number 2 on letting go, I talked about letting go, how to understanding more about letting go. Well, now I want to make it real by bringing in Pluto with some specifics about how I approach Pluto and how I work with Pluto. Now, for those of you who are already fans of evolutionary astrology, you were probably drawn to it, of course, to look at your own chart and understand yourself. That's how all of us get started. But to understand more about soul, a need to understand something about soul. And when I was learning what human evolutionary astrologers were talking about soul, specifically the work of Stephen Forrest, and I'm from his apprenticeship program. I joined that in 2004, um, and then working with some of the writings of Jeff Green, and I haven't studied in his program, but from those two perspectives on soul, I kind of still had questions. So I appreciate their work, and yet I had to go further. So what I do in evolutionary astrology is a third approach. And that's not really clear because I spend a lot of time on YouTube doing videos about everything else. So anyway, so I thought today I would take an opportunity to flesh out the story about grief and add this perspective. So essentially the model of soul that I'm teaching is channeled from an ascended master that I work with. It's Hermes. Yes, that Hermes. Jehudi, Thoth, Saint Germain, Merlin, it's all the same being. And that being hangs around Earth to help humans evolve no matter what it is that we need. And when I was getting into evolutionary astrology and listening and reading to these models of soul and thinking, I think I need another explanation. I asked if there were any beings available to help. And I kind of did it tongue in cheek because I was channeling spirit guides at the time, but I didn't really believe some being would come forward and teach me. But that's exactly what happened. So the model of soul I teach includes a lot about Pluto because if we look at Pluto, being very reductive, not being fair to either person's full system, Steve might say, might start with the deepest wounding of the soul. Jeff might start with the deepest intentions of your soul. And as they worked together over some years, they realized they're talking about the same thing. They just kind of have different ways of getting there. So talking about the journey of soul. And so the way that I understand soul is it's a portion of divine consciousness that can't be harmed and can't be wounded. So you don't have to fix it. You don't have to feel guilty if you do something destructive to yourself or others. Divine love is the basis of consciousness that is the soul. The full explanation of this is contained in my Evolutionary Astrology Basics I course. It's not astrology basics. You need to have houses, signs, planets, aspects, an understanding of those things before you get into it. But it presents in quite specific detail the entire model of soul and how to understand how Pluto fits with it. So if you're intrigued by this and want to know what this third thing in evolutionary astrology is that I'm doing, EA Basics I or Evolutionary Astrology Basics I is the way to go. It's a home study course. So Yeah, parts of I would say the empowerment journey that the soul sets out for the human. That's where I start with Pluto. And that includes feeling strong and confident, aka empowered, but also sometimes not feeling strong and confident or feeling powerless, even, right? Not feeling strong. So that necessarily the Plutonian journey for any person over many, many lifetimes includes ups and downs like this. Now, your soul isn't wounded, as some EA people seem to believe. Your soul isn't wounded. Your soul is divine consciousness. How can you wound God? How can you wound divine consciousness? Because whatever, you threw an insult at somebody in traffic, or do something self-destructive. You can't harm divine wisdom. You can't harm divine consciousness. So the soul is here living this human experience as you to learn what it's like to do so, feeling sometimes strong, sometimes not strong. So you go back and forth. In your unconscious is stored the memories of many, many lifetimes. So when those things get triggered, it's as if you're feeling them in real time. And so another innovation that I bring is to talk about the soul's many lifetimes or your soul's other lifetimes. I don't use the phrase past lives unless I'm introducing somebody new to the work and I'm trying to create a reference point, like a launching point. But essentially, when your fear from another lifetime or anger or joy gets triggered, it feels real now because it's a store of energies in your unconscious that get triggered. Now, the Pluto part of this includes grief. From your astrology studies, all the Plutonian keywords, right? Anger, rage, jealousy, depressiveness or depression, hopelessness, despair, suicidal thoughts, rage, violence, all the things, guilt, shame, self-doubt, regret, self-recrimination, all the deepest and most awful feelings that humans feel, they relate to Pluto. So grief is one of them. Now, Pluto, wherever it is in a person's chart, represents where that person needs to become strong and confident, yet yet will activate the store or cache of other life memories that feel in real time, right? So I must do this to make life feel meaningful, but I'm going to have to deal with pain, guilt, anger, depression, powerlessness, despair, all the things. Shame, whatever. I will have to deal with those things as I approach this thing to make life meaningful. So every human essentially is in this difficult position. I have to do this thing to make me feel like I have to do this to make me feel that my life is worth living. It's a core fundamental survival thing. But when I do it, when I do it, I will trigger a variety of things from other lifetimes. So thinking about this cache of memories from many lifetimes, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of stuff is in there. All the happy, all the unhappy, all the doubts, all the trepidation, all the hesitation, all the wondering if I should doubt myself, wondering if I'm to blame, all the, what do I do if I make an empowered choice that hurts somebody else, or what do I do if somebody makes an empowered choice that harms me? All these things are stored in the kind of Plutonian level in that unconscious cache of memories. And so grief is part of it. As I said in one of the other videos, the grief videos, disappointment, abandonment, actually losing someone to death, the loss of a lifestyle, the loss of something, anything that is about loss can incur or inspire grief. So anything, essentially, in anybody's chart, wherever Pluto is, house, sign, aspect, retrograde, direct, whatever, wherever Pluto is, it's a marker of many things, but one of them is, what kind of unprocessed grief might this person carry? What might this person carry from other lifetimes where she or he felt powerless and might need to grieve that before giving the self permission to step forward and create what really matters for him or her to create? So I don't want to go through everything, but I want you to, like all the houses and signs and aspects in direct retrograde, but I want you to understand that every Pluto placement indicates there is unprocessed grief. It may not be activated right now in that person's life. It may be activated from birth and they're still trying to deal with it decades later. Maybe it's going to be activated later. Maybe it's a cyclical thing. Maybe when relationships end, the grief comes up. Maybe when somebody passes away, the grief comes up. Maybe when they doubt themselves, grief comes up. But every Pluto placement or configuration in a person, in anybody's chart, holds the seed of this unprocessed grief from many lifetimes. So it's all individual stuff, and it's all potentially stuff about our connection to the world. It is filtered different experiences and different ways of seeing it through the different houses and signs. But anyway, I'll just give you a couple examples. Like Pluto in the first house, person must create independence to make life feel meaningful, must steer the ship of her own life. Well, maybe along the way, a group kicked her out to push her into independence. Well, maybe she needs to grieve that. Maybe she made a choice to leave or abandon somebody in order to have that independence. Well, she would have to grieve that. Pluto in the second house, I must live according to my own value system and use resources in ways that create self-respect. Well, maybe that means sometime letting somebody else down. Maybe a business partnership goes awry, or a relationship, something goes awry, and that person says, I'm going to lose my mind if I don't use my time in ways that work best for me. That's Plutonian empowerment. Well, maybe they need to grieve letting someone else down, or maybe they need to grieve feeling controlled by somebody else's value system. Somebody else is trying to control them or push their values on them. Maybe when you get in the second house, creating self-reliance, maybe you make a choice to be independent and self-reliant, and maybe it doesn't go so well, and you end up, destitute in some lifetime. Well, maybe you have to grieve that with Pluto in the second house. Or how you use money. Maybe you thought XYZ was a great investment and you lost everything. So anyway, it's like all throughout the chart, wherever Pluto is, the person in many lifetimes, and it's not just 5 or 6, it's millions of lifetimes. Anyone who tells you, oh, you're living your 4th life on Earth, complete baloney. Anyone who tells you you're on number 106 of 108, and if you just forgive your mom and your cat, you can progress. No. Millions, if not billions of lifetimes, all throughout the human time, all the Earth timeline, in all these different forms, these different life forms. Even before humans, you were living lives on Earth. So trying to figure out what it means to be here, having certain experiences. So this is, for any person, kind of a limitless cache of memories, and certain things will get triggered at certain times. So anyway, all around the wheel, Pluto in a house says this arena of life, or these areas of life, these behaviors and activities, right? Third house, learning, communication. Fourth house, dealing with home and family, nesting, community, creating belonging. Fifth house, self-expression, art, creativity, certain kinds of playful sexuality or attractive sexuality, that kind of thing. Not the deep bonded thing of the 8th house, but the mating dance or the attraction thing. 6th house being all the parts of life about being of service, being helpful, improving things, fixing things, being a good team player. 7th house, one-on-one relationships, getting to know you, creating, cultivating fairness, building bridges together. 8th house, relying on each other, going into the depth of psychological and emotional material and transforming together while trying to have good boundaries. 9th house is a search for truth, search for higher level meaning, the search for it. Doesn't mean you ever find it. 10th house, building something in the world, reputation, ambition, right? All the parts of life related to that, including work and career, but not limited to that. 11th house, goals, envisioning a future and allying with others to create such a future together. 12th house, learning to surrender egoic power in order to embrace divine power and bring that through, right? Learning to let go of control issues, put in the 12th. So anyway, all the way around, wherever your Pluto is, you have a cache of memories that may come up, and something disempowering you might need to grieve, or some time when you used strength or confidence or power in ways that didn't feel good, you might need to grieve that too. Okay, now, regarding the COVID-19 business, the world changing, a lot of people being told to stay home. people who live alone suddenly have to be with their feelings. People who live with other people suddenly have to be with those other people. And you're getting tuned into what needs in you to be processed, including potentially kinds of grief. Now, people are getting sick and people are dying, and this will make the human heart sad, of course. You may not know anybody who's sick or anybody who's passed away, but it affects all of us, and we are all connected. And the human heart is, you know, we're all in it together, and we know that. We feel that. But regarding Pluto issues and whatever cache of memories you might be challenged to deal with regarding grief, in a bunch of lifetimes, not in every single one of the millions of lifetimes, but in a bunch of lifetimes, something like a pandemic or a great loss of life or war. Even now, people, at least in the government in the US here, are talking about we're at war, and Trump wants to think of himself as a wartime president, as if it will give him some respectability or something, as if it can cover for his incompetence and inadequacy. Um, War, so memories of war from many lifetimes, of how people are dying far away and you can't do anything about it and it hurts all of us, or someone you love. Anyway, all these memories potentially could be triggered. The sense of powerlessness in the face of a pandemic, right? Something we can't see, and that so we're powerless in terms of that. Powerless, perhaps we might feel in terms of sorry, a little Yoda action there. We might feel powerless in terms of how can we get our government to move quicker with making ventilators when they're not taking the risk seriously. Not everybody, but the leadership. How can we know it's going to get worse? How can we help? How can we stop? But we're supposed to stay home. What We can't help, right? That powerlessness can bring up grief, right? So everybody's Pluto placement, filtered through the lens of house, sign, aspect, direct, retrograde, has a story to tell about other life grief that needs to be processed. And now during this, this unique time, we you know people might be really feeling challenged to do that. So I stand by my recommendations in videos 1 and 2. I mean, they're in the COVID-19 video list, but as far as like the subset on grief, 1, 2, and this is number 3, I stand by those recommendations to be willing to allow yourself to feel things, right? Yet I want you to really understand that the Plutonian cache or version of grief is the worst. It's not sorrow. It's not sadness. It's not feeling down. It's like powerlessness and deep, deep pain. And so you might, or others around you, trapped in your house with you, might feel the worst Plutonian things coming to the surface. And one of the secrets of Pluto energy in all of our lives is that most of us avoid it. So this fits with my other videos in the COVID-19 list about understanding the collective environment of fear and uncertainty that we're living in. Your other life Plutonian stuff might get triggered. Just want to put your attention on that. So again, Evolutionary Astrology Basics I will give you the full model of soul and teach you the 4 steps that I use to analyze charts from a karmic or multi-life angle. Also, you can get a Soul's Journey soundbite, which is about a half an hour individualized personal reading of, I'll tell you your multi-life story in about 30 minutes. It's kind of a cool thing, and people really love them. So anyway, you can get those at tdjacobs.com. And if you're feeling really overwhelmed by emotion, I have 2 resources for you. One of them is healingsuicide.com. Tells you a story about soul and its multi-life journey, how it understands your life, how it understands suicide, how to work with some intense feelings that we don't know how to work with, how to talk about these things that may make us lose faith in life and feel despair. And then also the 22 channeled meditations from Jehudi and Metatron. They're each about 20 minutes long. So it's quite a It's quite I don't know how many hours it is. I guess it's over 7 hours. Um, yeah, it's over it's over 7 hours of channel material. I made it available for free recently. I may put a small price on it in a few weeks. We'll see, but I'm encouraging you to download that so you can get a sense of how to connect with these other frequencies that can help you clear energies and center yourself and not give in to the collective fear, and become, have more stamina for making self-caring, self-respecting decisions. So anyway, tdjacobs.com, healingsuicide.com. Stay tuned for more videos on the COVID-19 story, because I'm just working through my list of all the things that I want to address. Take care.